So these are some of the questions we ask ourselves when we really think about how do we wow our customers, and how do we get our customers to want to tell stories to their friends and family about their experiences with us. And so in our whole goal is, 10 years from now, it doesn't actually have to be limited to shoes or clothing or even online retail. If we really think of ourselves as being in the customer service category, there could be a Zappos Airlines or a Zappos Hotel. And so for all of this focus on making customer service what the Zappos brand is all about, the number one priority of the company is actually not customer service. The number one priority for the company is company culture. And our whole belief is that if we get the culture right, then most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term enduring brand or business will just be a natural byproduct of that. So we actually do a lot of stuff on the culture side, including we do a separate set of interviews purely for a culture fit, and they have to pass that plus the regular interview in order to be hired. We'll fire people, even if their specific job performance is perfectly fine, but if they're bad for the culture, we'll fire them for that reason alone. And there's a whole training process that we go through where everyone goes through the exact same training as our call center reps, and we also integrate the culture into every employee's performance reviews. And so in terms of how we think of our brand at Zappos, we have something we internally refer to as the 3 C's: clothing, customer service, and company culture. And this is kind of the life cycle of the customer. So customers that have never heard of Zappos before, have no idea what we do, we want them to know we've got a great selection of clothing, footwear, and other product categories. And once they know about that, then we want them to know we're all about delivering the very best customer service and customer experience. And that's not something we tell them so much as something they experience when they see how quickly the shoes get to them, or they see how easy it is to return or exchange an item, or they call our customer service and connect with someone that's there and truly doesn't feel like it's someone that's there just for a paycheck, but truly wants to deliver great service. And once they know about that, then we want people to know about our company culture, because that's really the platform that makes everything possible. So we've actually had customers tell us when they get that perfect outfit or perfect pair of shoes that Zappos is happiness in a box. So whether it's the happiness that customers feel from getting that perfect outfit or perfect pair of shoes, or the happiness that customers feel from experiencing great customer service, or the happiness that our employees feel from being part of a culture where the values of the company match their own personal values, the thing that we realize ties all of these 3 C's together is that Zappos is really just about delivering happiness, whether it's to customers or employees, and we try to apply that same philosophy to our vendor partners as well, and hence the title of my book that came out a few years ago. So for those of you who didn't read the book, I'll do the really quick Cliff Notes summary of the book, which is basically read these 2 books. And highly recommend reading these books. In fact, these books I wish existed when Zappos was founded, because it would have saved us a lot of trial and error. And we actually teach classes on these books to our employees, Good to Great and Tribal Leadership. And the reason why I think these books are really important is because the authors researched and looked at what separated the great companies in terms of long-term financial performance from just the good ones or mediocre ones. And they were actually kind of surprised by their findings. They found that the great companies had 2 important ingredients that the good ones or mediocre ones generally did not have. The first ingredient is that the great companies all had strong cultures. And for us at Zappos, we formalized the definition of our culture into 10 core values. You can do a Google search for Zappos Core Values, or I'll make this presentation available too for anyone that wants it afterwards. And although what's interesting is we didn't always have core values at Zappos, and it wasn't until 4 or 5 years into the company that we rolled out our core values. And part of the reason why we kind of dragged our feet on it, and if we could do Zappos all over again, the one thing I would do differently is actually roll out core values from day one. Part of the reason why it took so long for us to roll out is because it felt like one of those big corporate things to do, and I think the reason we felt that way is because a lot of companies, especially these bigger corporations, have these things called guiding principles or core values or whatever they're called. But the problem is they're usually very lofty sounding and kind of read like a press release the marketing department put out. Maybe you learn about it on a brochure or on the website or day one of orientation, but then it just becomes this meaningless plaque on the lobby wall that no one really pays attention to. So we didn't want that to happen with us at Zappos. And so I basically just sent an email out to the entire company and asked everyone, what should our core values be? I got a whole bunch of different responses back and went back and forth for about a year, and then eventually we came up with these list of 10 values. And so we actually have interview questions for each and every one of these values, and then we actually are willing to willing to fire people if they're not living up to these values, even if they're doing an amazing job in terms of their actual job function. And when you use that criteria of what are you actually willing to fire for, completely independent of actual job performance, it's actually a really hard list to come up with. And so I would encourage you guys to actually think about for your businesses, what are the values that are right for your business and for yourself and your employees. And what I found really actually interesting about the research from those books, Good to Great and Tribal Leadership, because sometimes the reaction we get, especially after people that tour our offices, and if you toured our previous offices in Henderson, they're all decorated crazily, and every once in a while you might see a random parade going by. And people are like, okay, happy for you, Zappos, you've got this crazy culture, made the Fortune Best Companies to Work For list several years in a row, but the stuff you're talking about would never work at my company. And what I found interesting about the research from those books is that they found that it actually doesn't matter what your values are. What matters is that you have them and you align the entire organization around them. And the power actually comes from the alignment that you get.